Hello and welcome to a Pod of Cthulhu Behind the Bar. Today we have Binary Star Games with us, and of course my delightful co-host Jay. And we're going to be talking about some of the games that Binary has created. Seems that there's actually a fair few, and expansions that I was unaware of at the time. But the very first question we always ask every person is, if a Pint of Cthulhu was any kind of drink, what drink would it be?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm thinking something like some sort of like very dark beer is my thought. Like something that's like that's your meal for the day kind of thing.
Fair dues, almost like a Guinness then.
Yeah, there you go.
There we go. Well, Jay, if you'd like to start off with the first proper questions, go ahead.
Sure thing. How about you just tell us a bit about yourself, about about your games, about yourself?
Yeah, so I started developing in 2020. Well, I started publishing in 2021. I started developing earlier than that. But my first published game was indeed the one you bought recently, and we were talking about probably, Apocalypse Frame. The version 0.1 was released in 2021. It got polished up and released properly in 2023, and that's the version you have now. But since then, I've made quite a few things. I've worked with various... So that one's a Lumen system. I've worked with other people's systems. I've made my own games. I've made my own systems. I do a lot of stuff. It's a broad question.
Fair play. So, what kind of experience did you have with TTRPGs before you started this? Were you like a player? Did you just enjoy them? You know, what was before making?
Yeah, so to start with, I was based back in the day. Like I played 3.5 Pathfinder a lot, like back in late 2000s, early 2010s. Past that, basically that's basically my origin. Like I was running, I was playing, I was in a lot of games. The thing with playing 3.5 in Pathfinder is you start to realize its flaws very quickly. Very apparently, as soon as you play a lot of it. So, you know, as a GM, you start to figure out, okay, like what if I do this? Like what if I change this? What if I change that? And like once you start changing enough things, you kind of hit a sheep of Theseus moment where you're like, okay, well, why don't I just throw this out loud and start over? This is kind of what I did with 13th Age, like at the very start of the pandemic in like late 2019 and early 2010. And that was the thing that really got me like thinking hard about it, was basically just that timing of I'm making this anyway, and then I have nothing to do because I am inside the house. What if I just keep going with this? And thankfully I had a local group, or they were local, now they're not local as much, but a local online group that was willing to test out my half-finished bullshit games at the time. So, you know, along the way, I eventually did finish that out. It's 36 Way. I have it on my website. But the thing at the very end of developing that was I heard about Lumen, and I was like, I want to try making some of this. You know, I was tired of working in this very D&D framework. So I was like, okay, what if I just make this little thing? It'll take like a month. Why not? And then I just like made it. And it's like, oh, this took a month and is way better than the thing that took like 2 years to make. So from there, I started getting more into the indie scene, just being like, okay, like what have I missed by not like really diving headfirst into this as much? And here we are.
So tell us a bit about a brief overview of all of your games, because you've made a lot of games.
That is a very tall order, but I'll do my best. I guess I'll go over like the main ones, because I've made a lot of little stuff too.
Yes.
But like the main ones is probably what you're asking about. So the first one I released, as I mentioned, was Apocalypse Frame. That one was, I was like kind of thinking about like the receding pandemic, like the, you know, uselessness of governments, like, you know, what can come of this sort of thing. And just thinking about like that sort of thing when I wrote it a lot. So that is a mech game about like after some alien infection messes up a lot of the earth and a lot of governments don't do anything about it. A lot of governments crumble, a big like the Republic, which is not a republic, takes over. and then your group, the collective, basically splinters off of that and tries to like forge their own way. So that one is just a very, I don't know if you're familiar with Lumen, but it is very much a Lumen game in that it is very like fast, it's fluid. You can run a combat in like less than an hour. It's very, very power fantasy is usually the word that gets thrown around. Like, I think the combat example I have in the book is one character taking out like 8 different enemies. Like it's very much that kind of game. So that was the first thing I released. The next major project I released after that was probably Valiant Horizon. So that one released in 2023, or at least the initial version did. Then the final version released the year after. But the initial version released in 2023. That one was using a system of my own devising, Total Effect, which I just released another Total Effect game this month. So we'll get back to that later. But the idea, generally speaking, with the rolls in Total Effect is you roll 3d6, you take the total, but you also use each of those individual dice. Those are the effect. So an ability will say, like, use mid die for this. So that sort of thing. You can do things like build in damage to an attack roll. You can build in like how much happens to like something that checks for like success or failure, that kind of thing. It makes every roll very information dense. So I released an initial SRD for that in late 2022, and this was the first game that came of that in 2023. So I itch funded that, and that went pretty well. So after that, later that year in 2023, I had hired on Charlotte Leskowski as the artist for Valiant Horizon. So Charlotte and I got to talking about like, okay, like what else do we want to do? And we started talking about like this mech idea that Charlotte had. So I started working with Charlotte about that. Like, that was Celestial Bodies. So initially, Charlotte had this idea of like building mechs on a grid. I was like, what if that grid became like an attack grid too, like a battleship style attack grid? So like you build the mech parts out and that's what you're attacking, that kind of thing. And then we just kind of went back and forth on that, riffed back and forth, and eventually we itch funded Celestial Bodies in 2023. That is, to my knowledge, the highest ranking itch fund ever, I think. We raised, I think, 8,700, something like that.
Nice.
Yeah, it did way past our expectations. We were blown away. We properly kickstarted that this year, or last year, rather. I keep forgetting it's on 2025. We kickstarted that last March. So, almost exactly a year ago, actually.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah. That was the next thing, and that's what I'd been working on a lot. In between that, when I initially wrote the Total Effect SRD, I had kind of like half of a stub of a game that I'd created called Liminal Void, which is supposed to be kind of like a space gig economy kind of game. In my spare time, I kind of ended up remaking that game every year, just like trying to like build, just like basically from first principles, what do I want this to be, because I was never quite satisfied with it. Eventually, I hit something that I actually wanted, and I renamed it. That is Null Space, and that is the game that just came out. I was itch funding that for Zine Month, and that itch fund just ended, like last Friday.
That was very fresh off the pages then.
Yep.
Okay,
One of the games you haven't mentioned that I'm really interested in is Anointed.
Yes,
Or
so
if that's like a Module 4 game.
that's a complicated one. So, I had initially started that game. I don't know if it's going to finish in exactly that form. The thing is that I start a lot of things and then I decide, I don't know if I like it in this form. That's what I've actually been building out as a video game.
Really?
Yes. I am not joking about that at all. I have I'd say about 90% of a vertical slice of that. So,
That is...
this is what I mean in a different form. Like, it's... The more I was playing it, the more I was like, I don't know if this needs to be a TTRPG, but I think this would make a kick-ass video game.
Yes, because it's very Souls inspired. It's something Soulsborne, yeah? Like Elden
Yeah.
Ring, Bloodborne, Dark Souls.
Exactly. And the more I played it, initially I'd build it out as like kind of a party game, but the more I messed with it, the more I was like, this kind of makes more sense as like a one-on-one kind of thing. Like, one player versus the world. I was like, what are we doing here? Let's just make this a video game.
I'd be interested to see if you can, how you pull that off. I mean, I'm sure you can.
I can.
Do you have much experience with like making like actual video games rather than TTRPG? I mean, it's a very different ball game.
So, that's a complicated question. The answer is yes, but I'm not really using that experience. So I used to be a Unity dev in a previous life, or at least like, you know, not for a major game studio, but for like other stuff like that. But so I did know some game development stuff, but what I did is, just as a challenge to myself, I decided, what if I just made this in a front-end framework? So indeed, I made this in React, which if you are familiar with it, you will understand that that's an insane idea, but here we are. But yes, that is what the current build is in.
Okay, we'll try and work out which question to ask next now. Yeah, I'd say for each of your main games then, what was the kind of thing that inspired you? So, obviously, Apocalypse is going to be different from Celestial Bodies kind of thing. What inspired you to make each of these? What were you watching? What were you reading when the idea suddenly came? This could work.
Yeah, so the big thing for Apocalypse Frame was Xenoblade X. Like, I had replayed that summer before. Like, I started making that, and I was just thinking about that game loop, Xenoblade Chronicles X, like the one that just got remade recently, which is great for me because it was before on a system that nobody had. But that one, just thinking about that loop of like, okay, like you have this independent colony, you're thinking about like going out and doing missions for them, coming back, you've got mechs, like this world is kind of messed up, all that. Thinking about that and keeping it more local. That game's about like establishing a colony somewhere else. This one is just about the somewhere else comes to you, more so. So that's that. With Valiant Horizon, I was trying to think of like, that's very much a JRPG adjacent game. So like, obviously, you know, you can talk about the standards. You know, I'm a millennial of a certain age, so Chrono Trigger, FF6. You know, I don't need to glaze them. They've gotten enough already. But the one I was really thinking about right before writing it was Xenoblade 3, actually. You can see a lot of DNA in that one, in that how Valiant Horizon works is that you can basically borrow abilities from your friends eventually when you become more friends with them. So this is something I was looking at Xenoblade 3 for, because that does that, but it also does it with NPCs, it does it with all sorts of things. That's how you like unlock various classes, that kind of thing. I kind of flipped and reversed that, which is to say you can learn stuff from them first, and eventually you can become their class if you're really good friends with them. So that was the kind of inspiration there. With Celestial Bodies, the big thing with that is just trying to think about, like, I'm trying to not give a political answer for this, but it has a political answer.
I mean, when we say no politics, we mean like
in-depth heavy.
Okay.
If you're naming a particular politician going, fuck you, suck my dick, that's a problem, potentially.
Okay.
But if you're just going, are these broad social issues wanted to go, then that's fine.
Yeah.
So, the thing I was thinking about with Celestial Bodies, which I never actually said the premise of, Celestial Bodies is, after Earth, something happened to Earth. We don't specify it, it's not important. Everyone spreads out in the galaxy, just goes every which direction, and eventually they hit the edge of it, which is to say, they find a bunch of dead gods floating in space. They decide to make mechs out of them, because of course we do. Like, I mean, that's what you do. You know, what could go wrong? So, thinking about that, the origin of that was mostly, like, thinking about, like, basically the concept of infinite growth in capitalism is really the thing I was thinking about a lot. Of just, like, to what end will we ever stop growing? If we hit dead gods in space, will we ever think, like, hey, maybe what if we don't? Or will we just keep going? And I think the answer is we just keep going. And I think that's that's happening in the game. Null Space is very much That one was very Expanse inspired. That one was very System Shock inspired. I was trying to think of like, so a lot of space horror is very like kind of like retro futuristic. Like you kind of had the cassette futurism thing going on with Alien, all that. I was trying to avoid that. So my thought of it was more so like, what if I just do like horror from like a kind of like late 2010s, early 2020s perspective of like, you don't have like bells, you don't have like levers, you don't have like cool screens, you don't have knobs. You have a shit touch screen that doesn't work and like tells on you to your boss. Like you have like some AI that like doesn't really listen to you and just kind of does whatever. Like that's kind of the vibe I bring in Null Space. So it is very much a gig economy game of just like you are people who cannot be normally employed, and you're just trying to like make your way in like the solar system, which is, as you might guess by that explanation, very shit future capitalist. So
fair play.
Maybe the real monster was capitalism.
Maybe it was.
Oh, right. Jesus, sorry,
Yeah, go for that one.
yeah. What was your favourite game to make?
Oh, that's hard to say.
Pick a favourite child.
God, yeah, exactly. While I was making it, the answer was well. The question is when you ask me that question during the development process is going to get you a very different answer. The thing with game development is that it's very fun at first, and then you hit the plateau of, oh shit, I have to make the rest of the game. So probably the most fun games I had to make were the ones that were short, so I don't ever hit that plateau. Which is not a very satisfying answer, but nonetheless, that's probably true. So probably most recent fun games to make I did were probably Corpse Slayers, which was, I think, 2024. That one's just a little cyberpunk game. It's just 20 pages, short and sweet, get it done. The most recent fun game I had to make was Death Has Come to This Town, which is a very pathologic-inspired 3-player GM-less game about basically a town going to shit during the plague.
Nice.
So, with each of these games, what kind of experience are you trying to give players? I mean, some of them are obviously very different from each other, but
yeah, no kidding.
What's the overall experience? Yeah, what kind of experiences do you want players to take away from this?
So it really depends game to game. For Apocalypse Frame, the experience I had was basically just like pure power fantasy. It's like you are a fucking metal god on the ground. Like you are going to go in, you are going to fuck up like 50 guys who go, it's a Gundam, and then immediately get demolished. You know, it's great. With Valiant Horizon, that one was really about like the friends you make along the way. So like a big thing in that game is relationships and just like how you grow closer to each other, how you build out each other's stories. During the course of the game, you not only build out your own stories, but also like stories of the mentors of the crystals inside your head, basically. So you kind of like build out the setting kind of retroactively by building out what they did in their lives. So a lot of that is just like basically learning from and then becoming heroes yourselves throughout that whole process of just like learning about each other, learning about yourself, doing great deeds. Celestial Bodies is very... Celestial Bodies is, I think, not as coherent as like a thing in that sense. Like I didn't have like a very specific experience other than like this combat's gonna feel great and like it's very much about like, you know, growth over time and capitalism. But that one, I kind of want you to get away with the experience of like kind of being in a very messy universe that just keeps getting messier and messier. Like, and people just keep bringing in messier things into it as time goes on. In Null Space, I just want you to basically just feel like you are being squeezed at every second. Like, economically, maybe physically, I don't know what you get into. But especially just, I don't want you to ever feel comfortable or like you're coasting. Like, that game has a lot of systems built into it that ensure that over time you'll probably just get in trouble over and over again, and you'll be on your ass eventually.
Nice. So, what is the best part of making a game to you? The most fun, the most satisfying, most fulfilling?
The best parts are at the beginning and the end. Everything in the middle is tough, but the beginning is great because you got all these great ideas. You're doing the stuff that you care the most about. You're like, you're more directly working with what brought me to make this game. It's like, that's the fun stuff. The end is great too, because then you've made it, you released it, and everyone sees all the cool stuff you did. Everything in the middle, take or leave it. But, that's the process though. You don't get the end without the middle.
So, making all these different games, what kind of things have you found yourself having to put on the cutting room floor? What kind of bits didn't make the grade?
Oh God, that's a very large question. I have a very large back burner is the thing. So The thing is that I try not to throw anything out entirely. And the thing is that the reason I don't do that is that it can come back later in some other way. Even if it doesn't work now for something, it can come back. But as far as the things that I've either let fall by the wayside or will come back to later, I had outlined 3 different total effect games while making the SRD. 2 of them were Valiant Horizon and Null Space. The third one is Machinations of Court and Frame. That one is a very political mecha game. Very much like you are nobles, you get in duels, you don't get in combat. That kind of game. It's very much about maneuvering socially as much as fighting in the dang max. That one, I'm refusing to work on that one in the sense that I'm preventing myself from working on it. Because I need to finish some things first. It'll come back later, but it's coming back. The other one is that I had made a hack of Rune called Valiant Horizon Tactics. That one I had some great ideas for, and I think that needs a little more time in the oven, and it probably needs to split into 2 different games. Because I have a lot of ideas, and not all of them make sense together. Is my assessment of it after having not looked at it for a year, half a year, something like that. So that's something else that's sitting on the back burner. Other than that, I have so many side ideas that have just kind of wouldn't be cool if that I didn't really work out that part. One of the big ones is that sometime I want to make an Apocalypse Frame sequel game, which is to say not a second edition, a game that is a sequel to the first game, an XCOM 2 to an XCOM 1 kind of thing. It takes place after the first game and you probably lost. What now? That kind of thing. So that's one that's been percolating. It may come back later. But at the time I was thinking about it, I was like, this is probably too depressing. I don't really want to release this right now. We'll get there.
You gotta give it time to develop and ferment.
Exactly.
Speaking of development, if or when you do playtesting, how do you decide what to listen to and what's a little bit gripey? What do you take from playtesters and what do you discard?
Here's the key thing about playtesting to me. Listen when people tell you something feels weird or wrong or bad. Don't listen when they give you an answer as to why. So people are very good at determining when something feels off. But, if you're playing with people who are not game designers, they'll have all sorts of ideas as to why it feels off. The best example I can give of this was when I was doing that, like I said, that 13-page variant game. One of my players was complaining up and down about me nerfing one bard song. He was a bard. He was just like, oh, my class is useless without this, my class sucks without this, please make it better, please stop nerfing it. Here's the thing. That wasn't the problem. The problem was that every other song sucked. So that he felt like the only good one needed to be, better. So you have to kind of work around, okay, not what are they complaining about, but why are they complaining about it? That kind of thing. And sometimes the answer is not what they say. The other thing I can say about playtesting is that a lot of times direct feedback is not as useful as just observing people. So a lot of people are very used to clunky games or things that they would rather things that can be sanded off, but they're not used to having the ability to do that or to request it. So they'll just kind of like stumble through something that kind of sucks, but they're like used to it. Like, you know, like especially someone who's like good at who's done D&D a lot. Like if something has like very clunky combat, they'll probably be like, yeah, that's all right. Like I'm used to that. But like you have to like as a designer, you kind of have to watch that and just be like, okay, like what are we stumbling on? What is the stumbling block? Like what are people like zigging when they should zag on? Like why is it like that? And you don't necessarily have to like fix it as such, but you have to at least be aware that, you know, that's a thing and like decide whether or not you're going to mitigate it in some way.
Fair enough.
So, can you describe any good stories, memorable moments from playtesting any of your games? Something that really made you laugh or really made you actually go, yeah, this is working.
So, my initial story of like made me laugh was the initial version of Apocalypse Frame. I had to nerf one ability like 5 different times because it was still too good. But the first time, before I nerfed it at all, I basically had something that could like, it's a hex-based game. So something that like in a radius around itself could pull everything into its hex. Which this does not sound overpowered on its face. But the problem is I also had another class which basically did damage based on the amount of times it moved. So what would happen is one character would get into like the middle of the map, just pull everything into itself, and another character would just like run up behind it and just alley-oop dunk everything. And
Nice.
It was hilarious. It was so funny, but obviously not ideal. But I ended up nerfing that like to be like, okay, maybe like 3 squares, maybe 2 squares. Like eventually I ended up on 1 hex gets pulled. Like that's it. Because it kept being too good still. And that's probably still too good, frankly, is the thing. But it's at least a too good that's, like, fine. As far as moments where I knew something clicked, the initial, when I was playtesting, like, Mech Creation Celestial Bodies the first time, you know, I came up with some ideas, I made some parts, like, I came up with some, like, base frames to put those parts on a Friday. I was fucking with that thing all weekend. Like, I kept, like, putting shit together. Like, I couldn't stop doing it. Like, that was when I knew I had something. Like, after the next week and I was still kind of thinking about it, I was like, okay, no, we got something here. We got to build on this.
I have to say this before I forget it. Every time I've looked at Apocalypse Frame, have you ever heard of a game called Salvage Union?
I've heard of it, yeah. What about it?
Runs very differently.
Yeah, so I've heard.
But I can't help but keep comparing, like, the story-wise. They seem like they should go hand in hand together.
Yeah,
In a good
also
way.
very much
In a good
way.
way.
Yeah, yeah, that's the thing.
I don't mean that in a bad way, I mean it in a good way.
Oh, no, I got you, don't worry.
Yeah.
I've heard very good things about Salvage Union. I think I was waiting basically to have more money to get like a hardback because it seems like that kind of game. But I've heard very good things about it. So that's great to hear. My understanding is that it's a lot less power fantasy than Apocalypse Frame, let's say.
Yeah.
To say the least.
And a little bit on the world building. It's a little more, I dread to use the term hope punk. It's like,
Sure.
the capitalism has been fucking defeated. We're all living in a communist commune in the robot.
Yeah.
And like there's still capitalist problems and like the union versus corporations theme. But it's largely a things are better. We've gone past this whole fucking horrible grind thing.
Yeah. And that's kind of the vibe I have
yeah.
with Apocalypse Frame, is in the sense of like, you are independent now. Like,
Yeah.
they all want you back, but you did succeed in that sense. Like, that's your starting point, at least. Like,
Yeah.
whether or not it stays your ending point is another question, but that is
Yeah,
indeed
like
the
you're
starting
saying
point of
with
the game.
sequel. Yeah.
And the other obvious comparison would be Lancer, right? Which was like it's the Pathfinder D&D, and then Lancer for the mecha stuff.
Yep. Now that's one I've heard a million times, for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure. I bet Gundam and Transformers are up there too, as far as people can go.
Not Transformers, surprisingly, but yes, Gundam, sure.
Yeah. So, do you have any final bit of advice for people trying to create their own TTRPG?
Sure. The advice I always give is that start at the thing you care about. Like, so there's a lot of like advice, like, oh, well, start at this part, start at the opening, start at this, that. Start at whatever makes you want to create it. Like, what do you think the juice is? Start there. Everything will flow from that, and everything will be informed by it if you do. And that will make a better game.
Fair play.
Advice.
And last but not least, where can people find you and your absolutely amazing games?
Well, thank you. So you can go to binarystar.games. That's my main website. That has links to all my games, and also I have the Total Effect SRD up there. I have that 36 Way game. I've got a bunch of stuff up there. You can go to binary-star-games.itch.io. That's my digital store. That's got everything digitally. Or you can go to shop.binarystar.games, and that's got all my physicals.
Well, that was interesting, because I got this physical from a company called... Where is it? Peregrine Coast.
That's right. So I have indeed worked with Peregrine Coast. I work with other retailers too. But yeah, no, Peregrine Coast is great. I love them. Eric's fantastic.
Fair play, because when you said about like getting the physicals from your one, I was like, where have I got this from then?
I was wondering how quick you got it and how I didn't send it to you physically. That does make sense.
Oh, no, if I'd have known I could have got it direct, I would have asked for it signed.
Well, I mean, that's true. But, hey, if you can get something else direct, I'll be happy to sign it.
Definitely, I might have to now. Well, thank you very much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on, and thank you for agreeing to join us. I must admit, I didn't want to self-promote on your Discord, and I was like, how do I ask this without...
No worries.
Without seeming to be...
No, thanks for having me. This is great.
Well, thank you very much for joining us, and again, it's been a pleasure. Honestly, people, links will be in the description. Go check them out. Very much worth it. It's been a Pilot Cthulhu signing off. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.